And today, we are diving deep into the story of Prometheus. If you've only ever heard of him as the guy who simply stole fire, you are missing centuries of incredible cultural evolution. He's not just the original rebel.
No, he's so much more.
He's the champion of humanity, the source of our science, our technology, our civilization itself. He is the eternal symbol for every ambitious genius who ever tried to bring a little unauthorized light into the darkness.
And that is precisely the mission of this deep dive. We've gone through the sources, everything from the primal epics of Hesiod to the political poetry of the Romantics, to reveal how this figure, Prometheus, fundamentally transformed over time.
So his myth is like a mirror.
It's a perfect mirror, reflecting how vastly different eras viewed knowledge, defiance, the limits of human ambition, and of course the consequences that follow every great discovery.
So before we get into those huge transformations, let's just establish the basics. Who is the man, or I should say the titan behind the myth?
Okay, so Prometheus is one of the older generation of deities. He's a titan, son of Iapetus and either Clymene or Asia, an Oceanid. And what's critical there is that his lineage links him directly back to that pre-Olympian world.
And he has some very famous siblings.
He does. You have Atlas, of course, Minucius, and maybe most importantly for his own story, his brother Epimetheus.
And the names themselves, I mean, they just lay out the whole drama right there, don't they?
They absolutely do. It's this brilliant conceptual contrast. The name Prometheus, it literally means forethought.
Thinking ahead.
Exactly. From the Greek pro, before, and a root that has to do with, intelligence. He sees what's coming. He understands consequences before they happen.
And his brother is the complete opposite.
The total opposite. Epimetheus means afterthought. He's the one who acts first and then, deals with the fallout later. And that intellectual distinction, that tension between foresight and hindsight, it is morally central to the entire mythos.
Okay, let's unpack this evolution. We have to start with the earliest surviving accounts we have from the late 8th century BC. This is where Prometheus is not yet the noble savior of humanity. He's something much more primal, a trickster.
Right. Our foundation begins with the Greek epic poet Hesiod. You find this mostly in his theogony and also in his works and days. And in these texts, Prometheus is introduced with a decidedly negative slant.
He's not the hero.
Not at all. He's a lowly challenger, constantly trying to outsmart and undermine the absolute power of Zeus. He is, you could say, the first great irritant to the new king of the gods.
And the first great act of defiance, the one that really sets the cosmic balance askew, happens at the sacrificial meal at a place called Mecone.
Can you set the scene?
Right.
What was this meal all about? What were the stakes?
The meal in Mecone was crucial. It was meant to be a solemn settling of accounts between mortals and immortals. It was about defining the relationship between gods and men forever.
So establishing the rules of the game.
Precisely. To establish once and for all what tribute men owed to the gods and what men could keep for themselves. And Prometheus steps in here as this self-appointed advocate for humanity and attempts a really brazen trick on Zeus.
So tell us about these two famous bundles. How did he package them to be so deceptive?
He takes a sacrifice bowl and prepares two distinct offerings. The first bundle was the good stuff. The choice cuts of meat, the muscle, all the edible parts that would sustain humanity. But he cleverly hides all this goodness inside the ox's stomach, which would have looked
repulsive. It was a rough, ugly, and displeasing exterior.
And the second bundle, the bait.
Yeah, that was pure deception. It was just the inedible bull's bones. But Prometheus artfully wrapped them entirely in this glistening, tempting fat, the part of the animal that looked the richest and most desirable. So when he presents the choice, Zeus, the king of the universe, chooses the tempting but completely useless bones wrapped in fat.
Okay, but how could Zeus, who's supposed to be all-knowing, possibly fall for such a simple trick? Does Hesiod imply Zeus was genuinely fooled, or was there a longer game being played?
That's the critical question, isn't it? And scholars debate this all the time. In the Theogony, Hesiod says Zeus knew the trick was happening. He wasn't fooled.
So he chose the beta bundle on purpose. Why?
So that he would have a divine precedent, a reason to unleash his vengeance on Prometheus and, by extension, on humanity. He accepted the trick to ensure the balance of justice was tipped firmly in his favor for the coming retribution.
So this set the precedent for how sacrifices would work from then on.
Exactly. From that moment on, humans would keep the nourishing meat for themselves and burn only the bones and fat as a symbolic offering to the gods. Prometheus had successfully fixed the practice of Greek animal sacrifice in humanity's favor.
He secured the food for humanity, but he also earned Zeus's focused personal anger. And Zeus's first move wasn't subtle. It was the withdrawal of the very thing Prometheus had championed.
It was indeed the withdrawal of fire. Zeus, enraged by the Miyakoni trick, hides fire from humans entirely. And what's really important to note here, as the sources confirm, is that in this Hesiodic version, humans had fire before.
Oh, so it wasn't a new gift he was withholding, he was taking something away.
Exactly. He actively took away a foundational piece of technology and comfort, plunging humanity into a cold, dark, primitive state.
Which, of course, leads directly to Prometheus's most famous and most consequential crime, stealing that fire back.
He does. He steals the fire back, restoring technology and knowledge to humanity. He does this cleverly, hiding the stolen flames inside a giant fennel stalk, the narthex. It has a dry pit that burns really slowly, and you can't see it from the outside. A perfect container.
But this act is the final straw for Zeus.
It is. This second defiance brings on Zeus's double retribution, one that, in this telling, defines the misery of the human condition forever. Pandora.
Pandora. Her name means all gifts. The first woman, and in Hesiod's very harsh view, the beginning of all human trouble.
She was Zeus's masterpiece of revenge, specifically engineered to appeal to the afterthought brother Epimetheus, who was warned by Prometheus never to accept a gift from Zeus.
But he does anyway.
Of course he does. And Pandora was a collaborative project. Hephaestus crafted her from earth and water, Athena taught her weaving, Aphrodite gave her grace, and crucially, Hermes gave her cunning, deceit, and a bitch's mind. Hesiod explicitly calls her the origin of the deadly race and tribe of women who live amongst mortal men to their great trouble.
Wow. I mean, that is an astonishingly misogynistic origin myth. It frames women not as partners, but as the consequence of divine punishment for Prometheus's crime.
It absolutely is. And this really highlights Hesiod's focus on the decline and troubles of mankind. So Pandora was sent carrying a pithos.
Which is in a box, right? That's a later thing.
Right, that's a much later mistranslation from the 16th century that became popular. This was a large storage jar. And from this jar, she released every single ailment, affliction, mischief, and sorrow into the world. Plague, diseases, everything.
And the defining moment, the philosophical punchline of this whole part of the story, is what gets left trapped inside that jar.
Hope. Help us. Pandora manages to slam the lid shut too late to contain all the evils, but she does trap hope inside. And the sources are clear. Zeus forced her to seal it. He wanted hope withheld.
Which raises an intense question for you, the learner. Was trapping hope a blessing, ensuring that humans, despite all their suffering, would always have a little bit left? Or was it the ultimate curse?
Exactly. If hope is trapped, does it mean that humans are now perpetually afflicted, yet unable to attain the one thing that might truly bring them relief?
It suggests the suffering itself is inescapable no matter what. That is a very bleak view of the human condition.
It is a profoundly dark exchange in the Hesiodic tradition. Humanity gets fire and knowledge, but the cost is eternal misery and the withholding of true relief. It sets the theological stage for why the world is the way it is.
And the cost for Prometheus himself is that eternal torment we started with. We should detail the geography and the sheer physics of this punishment because it's so central to who he becomes.
The punishment is designed to be unending. Zeus binds him with unbreakable chains of adamantine to a rock face. And the traditional location for this is the Caucasus Mountains, often identified with Mount Elbrus or Mount Kazbek, a place considered the very edge of the known world by the ancient Greeks.
Emphasizing his total isolation.
Utter isolation. And then there's the eagle.
The eagle.
Zeus's sacred animal, his direct extension. Every single day, the eagle tears into Prometheus's liver. And, the Greeks considered the liver to be the seat of strong emotions, of passions, sometimes even the soul itself.
So it's not a random organ.
Not at all. It's deeply symbolic. But because Prometheus is immortal, his liver regenerates every night, ensuring that the pain is cyclical, immediate, and inescapable. It's a dynamic, eternal cycle of destruction and painful restoration.
And though it feels almost like an afterthought in Hesiod compared to the sheer scale of the torment, Prometheus is eventually freed.
Yes. Hesiod notes that many years later, the hero Heracles arrives at the Caucasus while on one of his labors. And with Zeus's explicit permission, and that permission is key, Heracles kills the eagle and breaks Prometheus's chains. But that closure doesn't really negate the immense theological weight of the punishment itself.
So in this Hesiodic foundation, we have this myth that explains sacrifice, the origin of human suffering, the role of women, and the relationship between powerful gods and tricky men. But now we jump forward about 3 centuries into the 5th century BC, and this entire narrative just transforms completely in classical Athens.
Right. The 5th century BC is the great age of Athenian tragedy and philosophy. This is where Prometheus becomes the cultural hero and martyr we recognize today. And the core source for this transformation is the surviving play Prometheus Bound, which is traditionally attributed to the tragedian Aeschylus.
And Aeschylus gives us the first major twist, the one that really reframes Zeus's cruelty as a political act of tyranny, not just justified revenge.
That's the Titanomachy twist. It's a profound political revision. In Hesiod, Prometheus is just a challenger. In Aeschylus, he played a decisive strategic role in securing the victory for Zeus and the Olympians over the other Titans.
So he was on Zeus's side.
He was the reason Zeus won. He provided the foresight and strategy for the new regime to triumph, which means Zeus's subsequent decision to torture him is transformed from mere punishment into a particularly harsh betrayal. It paints Zeus as a paranoid, ungrateful monarch.
And that idea of betrayal is essential for making Prometheus a sympathetic figure, a political martyr. And the scope of what he gave humanity widens so drastically beyond just fire.
It explodes into a full curriculum of civilization. He's no longer just a fire thief. He's the comprehensive educator. He claims to have taken humanity, which Aeschylus describes as this race of weak, blind creatures living in caves, and single-handedly elevated them.
What are some of the specific arts he claims to have gifted them? This goes way beyond just cooking.
Oh, the list is exhaustive, and it speaks directly to Athenian cultural values. It includes astronomy, teaching men how to read the stars, the art of writing and mathematics, architecture, the domestication of animals, sailing, even medicine. How to mix soothing remedies for sickness, and also the art of divination. This whole list transforms Prometheus into the intellectual champion of scientific and technological progress, which, perfectly justified Athens' embrace of those fields.
Aeschylus also gives him maybe the greatest benefaction of all, saving humanity from total annihilation.
Yes, this is a huge departure from Hesiod. Prometheus asserts that Zeus had actually intended to obliterate the human race entirely, just wipe them out and start over.
And Prometheus stopped him.
He claims he was the only one who stood in the way. He prevented this genocide. So his torture isn't just for stealing fire, it's for saving all of us from Zeus's catastrophic plan.
Yeah.
He becomes humanity's sole advocate, a truly tragic and sacrificial figure.
And this elevated status gives him enormous leverage because he holds the one piece of knowledge that can genuinely threaten Zeus's throne.
The secret knowledge. This is the linchpin of the Aeschylean drama. Prometheus knows of a prophecy, a potential marriage Zeus might make that would produce a son capable of overthrowing him, just as Zeus overthrew his own father, Cronus.
This secret is his ultimate bargaining chip.
It is. We know from the other now lost plays in the trilogy that Zeus eventually reconciles with him. And the secret is widely believed to be about the sea nymph Thetis,
who Zeus was pursuing
passionately. The prophecy said her son would be greater than his father. So Zeus, after learning this from Prometheus, backs off. Thetis marries a mortal, Peleus, and their son is Achilles. The greatest hero, yes, but safely mortal, contained. That reconciliation is the price Zeus pays to keep his power.
It's crucial to note that Aeschylus leaves two big things out from Hesiod's version, the Pandora story and the Mecone trick. What is he doing by omitting those?
By removing the trickster elements, the fat-wrapped bones, the deception Aeschylus effectively cleanses Prometheus of any moral ambiguity. He becomes a purely tragic hero. And by omitting Pandora, he removes the misogynistic explanation for human misery and places the blame for suffering squarely on Zeus's political tyranny.
He's rehabilitated.
Completely. From a cunning mediator to a suffering benefactor.
Now, around the same time, we see a really different, more philosophical use of the myth in Plato's dialogue, Protagoras. How does Plato use Prometheus and Epimetheus?
Plato uses the myth to draw a necessary distinction between practical skill and moral virtue. In his version, when the gods create mankind, Epimetheus is in charge of handing out qualities like speed and strength.
And being afterthought, he messes it up.
He's careless. He leaves man completely naked, weaponless, and unprotected. So they gather in communities, but they immediately start fighting because they lack any kind of civic structure.
So Prometheus steps in to solve the immediate survival crisis.
Yes. He steals fire and techne, which is best translated as creative power or craftsmanship, from the shared workshop of Athena and Hephaestus. He gives this to mankind so they can survive, build things, farm, master their environment.
But Plato makes a critical distinction here. Techne isn't enough. Technical skill doesn't create a functioning society.
This is Plato's key insight. He sees this technical skill as necessary, but inferior to the two highest gifts needed for a civilized society, Aegis, reverence or respect for others, and Daiho, justice.
And those don't come from Prometheus.
No, those are divine gifts bestowed on men by Zeus himself. So for Plato, Prometheus provides the practical skills for physical survival. But civic virtues, the things that allow a community to thrive, come from a higher, more divine source. Foresight alone isn't enough for moral governance.
What's incredible is that this defiant Titan, this enemy of Zeus, was actually the focus of religious worship in Athens itself.
That is a crucial cultural point. There's little evidence of Prometheus temples elsewhere in the Greek world, but Athens was the exception. He was actively worshipped, often right alongside Athena and Hephaestus, the gods of creative skills and technology.
It reflects the city's self-image as a center for progress and art.
Absolutely. He was a patron of craftsmen.
And the method of worship was very public, very civic. Tell us about the Lampedodromia.
The Lampedodromia, the torch relay race, was a major civic event, especially during the Panathenaic Festival, the city's biggest celebration. It was a rigorous relay that served as this tangible link between the gift of fire and the city's creative output.
Where did this crucial race begin and end?
It began at Prometheus's altar, which was located outside the formal city boundary in the grove of the Academy, fittingly, a place associated with learning. Teams would have to pass the flame, and it was apparently very difficult to keep it lit. If the fire went out, you were disqualified.
And the final destination of that flame was symbolic of the Titan's acceptance into Athenian life.
Absolutely. The winning team would bring the living flame into the heart of the city, right up to the Acropolis, and use it to light the sacrificial fire on the great altar of Athena. It physically linked the rebellious gift of fire to the state-sanctioned progress championed by Athena.
He's no longer just a punished Titan, he's a civic patron, a symbol of applied knowledge. And this really sets the stage for his final transformation into the powerful intellectual symbol of the last few centuries, the solitary genius.
Right. As we move into the modern era, the physical punishment becomes less important than its philosophical and psychological meaning. Through the Middle Ages, he was mostly an allegorical figure.
And the Renaissance really starts to weaponize this intellectual interpretation.
Precisely. Figures like Boccaccio in the 14th century offered Neoplatonic readings. He even imagined Prometheus stealing a ray of the divine wisdom from God himself. Then Marsilio Ficino in the 15th century saw Prometheus as an allegory for the human soul, seeking supreme truth, with the torture representing the intense intellectual torment brought on by human reason.
So the fire is no longer just technology, it's intellectual consciousness.
Right.
We even see this in Shakespeare's Othello with the phrase Promethean heat, the divine spark of life that once it's gone can't be restored.
All of these philosophical steps culminated in the Romantic period, which is where Prometheus transforms into the symbol we recognize most today. Wow. The lone genius resisting oppressive institutional power.
The Romantics were all about revolution, individualism, the power of emotion. How did Prometheus fit into that worldview?
He was the perfect vehicle. The Romantics drew explicit parallels between him and the revolutionary spirit of the age, the French Revolution, the suffering artist, even Milton's Satan, the noble sufferer resisting an arbitrary god. Prometheus was redefined as the creative individual asserting his own power against the oppressive father figure, represented by Zeus.
Let's start with Goethe. His poem Prometheus became this central, fiery text for the German Sturm und Drang, the storm and stress movement.
Goethe's poem is an explosion of defiant individualism. It's a stunning example of misotheism, the hatred of God. The poem is this magnificent, angry monologue where Prometheus addresses Zeus directly and rejects any dependence on him. He declares, "Here I sit and mold man after my own image, asserting his own creative power is equal to, if not bar than, the divine."
So he's not just stealing fire, he's claiming absolute creative autonomy.
Exactly. He's saying, I create the world, I create humanity, and I rely on my own will, not your capricious rule. It turns the conflict into this primal family drama of rebellion.
And this political element was taken to its ultimate conclusion by Percy Bysshe Shelley, who took Aeschylus's tragedy and completely rewrote the ending.
Shelley's Prometheus Unbound is an explicit political and philosophical rewriting. Shelley hated tyranny in all its forms, political, religious, social. So in his version, Prometheus refuses to reconcile. He stays defiant, refuses to reveal the secret, and through the sheer moral force of his suffering and love, he ultimately wins.
He literally dethrones Jupiter.
He does. Jupiter is cast down, and Prometheus is freed, not by permission, but by the power of his own spirit. It symbolizes the triumph of the human heart and intellect over oppressive religion and political tyranny. It's the poetic embodiment of utopian revolution.
And this whole romantic interpretation was cemented in popular culture by the novel that gave the Titan his definitive modern scientific identity, Frankenstein.
Mary Shelley's 1818 novel is subtitled, crucially, The Modern Prometheus. That subtitle is the intellectual key to the whole book. It draws a direct parallel between the Titan's ancient role-creating man from clay, giving life through unauthorized means, and the actions of the scientist, Victor Frankenstein.
Victor is stealing the fire of life through modern science, replacing the fennel stalk with electricity and chemistry. What are the core Promethean themes we see in his quest?
The novel perfectly captures the central dilemma, the relentless human striving, particularly the quest for scientific knowledge and the risk of overreaching, and the unintended consequences. Victor steals the secret of life, but like Prometheus, he pays a terrifying personal price. Isolation, unending torment, and the ultimate destruction of his world because of what his ambition created.
It's interesting that Victor rejects his own creation, kind of mirroring Zeus's rejection of humanity. The modern Prometheus doesn't suffer the eagle on the rock. His torment is purely internal, psychological.
That is the modern update. The punishment shifts from the external torment of the eagle to the internal psychological torment of guilt and alienation. Victor is punished by the results of his own success. He's the scientific genius who achieves the impossible, only to find the ethical consequences destroy him.
This motif is so universal, it clearly goes beyond Greek culture.
Absolutely. You see this pattern globally. In Georgian mythology, the hero Amirani challenged God and was chained in the Caucasus, the same location where birds ate his regenerating organs. It suggests a deep, shared human archetype about the punishment for unauthorized knowledge.
And the comparison to Lucifer, the light bearer, is also everywhere.
It is. Both are figures who bring unauthorized light or knowledge to humanity, and both suffer eternal punishment for it. They're the sympathetic rebels who challenge the absolute authority of a ruling deity for the sake of humanity's awakening.
And his name continues to live on in modern science and discovery, reflecting that eternal link to innovation.
Yes, permanently branding innovation with the Titan sacrifice. We have the chemical element Promethium, we have Saturn's moon Prometheus, and maybe most symbolically, the biography of J. Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb, was titled American Prometheus, directly linking the existential consequences of scientific overreach to the atomic age.
From Hesiod's cunning trickster to the father of the atomic age, that is an astonishing cultural journey.
To synthesize this profound shift, we've tracked Prometheus from a primal, cunning trickster punished by Zeus for his deceptions. He evolved into the ultimate philosophical champion of arts and sciences in Athens, a revered civic figure. And finally, he became the lone, defiant genius, risking everything for ambition in the romantic and modern eras.
The story isn't static. It's a living document about power. The journey shows us that the myth isn't about the fire itself, but what the fire eternally represents: knowledge, autonomy, and the cost of intellectual freedom.
The enduring power of Prometheus lies in his ability to embody that constant universal human tension between the profound desire for knowledge and the existential fear of its consequences, the hubris inherent in crossing divine boundaries. We, the learners, are always seeking the fire, but we must always reckon with the eagle.
And as we close this deep dive, let's circle back to one obscure but really telling detail from the sources: the satirical inclusion of Prometheus in Aristophanes' comedy, The Birds. In this play, Prometheus has reconciled with the gods on Olympus, but he is not the dauntless rebel of Aeschylus.
No, he's presented as a timid god.
A timid god who has to hide under an umbrella so that Zeus won't see him while he's negotiating with Zeus's enemies.
A timid god in disguise, years after enduring all that torment.
Right. So when we focus on the grand, dramatic suffering and the cosmic rebellion, are we missing the quiet, bureaucratic, and maybe deeply anticlimactic reconciliation that often follows the great struggle? Does this satire suggest that even the most revolutionary knowledge eventually gets domesticated, accepted, and perhaps even a bit timid in the face of established power? That is something for you to chew on until our next deep dive.